The breaking news from this morning, former national security advisor in Trump 1.0, John Bolton, his home, his office, being the subjects of the execution of search warrants in D.C. and Maryland this morning. Now, you may or may not be caught up with the latest, but I will get you there, and then we'll take a little bit of a deeper dive, not only in the legal issues, but we'll kind of take a trip down memory lane to kind of show why there's foundationally support for the claim that this could be a politically vindictive move by convicted felon Donald Trump and others, by the way. So, FBI agents seen at the home of John Bolton and at the office of John Bolton this morning. Now, let's be clear. When you have a search warrant, it has to have been approved by a federal magistrate judge. It's not like the cops, because then it becomes illegal. You can just go into your home. The Fourth Amendment protects you against unreasonable searches and seizures. And so we suspect, we being me and some other legal minds that have kind of gotten together and kind of hashed this over, that there's at least 2 search warrants. One for D.C. and one for Maryland. Maryland is John Bolton's home. D.C. is John Bolton's office, which would also suggest that at least 2 separate federal judges reviewed the affidavits that were submitted in support of those search warrants and found that probable cause existed to be able to approve them. So let's take a minute to talk about the law here. I just mentioned the Fourth Amendment. Again, it protects you, pursuant to the United States Constitution, against unreasonable searches and seizures of your person and your home and your vehicle. In this instance, in order to have a warrant approved, there's got to be probable cause that evidence of a crime is going to be located in those places. And you got to be specific, folks. Your search warrants cannot just be somewhere in Miami, Florida, Katie Phang has evidence of fruits of a crime. It can't just be that. And then it can't just be like, you get to search Katie Phang's home. It can't be that either, right? It's got to be very specific, which is why a lot of us are scratching our heads right now, because it can't be stale, meaning the information that is provided by that law enforcement officer as they swear under oath in support of the affidavit that must be presented to the judge to get that search warrant approved. That information can't be stale. It can't be based on information from a long time ago. And so we hear right now that media is reporting, and for example, this is the Times, that the investigation into John Bolton seeks to determine whether he illegally shared or possessed classified information. Sound familiar? Little Trump Mar-a-Lago, although it definitely wasn't that heinous looking bathroom. But we'll get to the Trump comparisons in a second as well. CNN reporting the FBI conducted a court-authorized search at former National Security Advisor John Bolton's home and office as part of a renewed investigation into whether he disclosed classified information in his 2020 book. But then we also have read other media reports that says the following, that it's not just illegal retention of classified information, but also that he was having conversations, perhaps, allegedly, with media and others in an attempt to smear Donald Trump, and that he was sharing classified information. I mean, again, because we haven't seen the allegations within the affidavits, we cannot say with certainty. But we can speak generally because people on background have been providing this information to the media. And along that vein, the Times goes a little bit deeper on the justification for the search. A senior federal law enforcement official with direct knowledge of the situation said that the search of Bolton's home and office was part of an investigation into accusations that Bolton had leaked sensitive national security information to the news media and other parties in an effort to damage the president. The investigation includes actions Mr. Bolton took over the past 4 years, not just in gathering of material for a book he wrote about his time in the White House, end quote. Okay, so if that's the case, why is this happening now? Well, there's been an escalation over the years by and between Bolton and Trump. If you recall, Bolton was the national security advisor in Trump 1.0. He had that job for a little bit over than a year or so, and then he was kicked to the curb by Donald Trump. Subsequent to that, Bolton wrote a book as most people did. And Bolton's book became the subject of not only a federal grand jury, a DOJ criminal investigation, and a lawsuit. So we're going to kind of go down that path and talk about those now, because I think it's very important to lay the foundation as to why this is sheer political retribution by Donald Trump that could be based on solid evidence that maybe Bolton committed a crime. I mean, why can't it be both, right? Okay, so let's talk about it quickly together. So if you'll recall, prior to June of 2020, the Justice Department opened a criminal investigation into whether Bolton unlawfully disclosed classified information in a memoir that he wrote. The Room Where It Happened. Dun, dun, dun. Okay? So, the criminal investigation was done in September of 2020. But in June of 2020, Bolton got the go-ahead to move forward with the publication of his memoir. But that was only after he was sued by the Trump administration to stop its release. The federal district court judge in the District of Columbia, Royce Lamberth, wrote, quote, with hundreds of thousands of copies around the globe, many in newsrooms, the damage is done. There is no restoring of the status quo. So, Bolton, in an effort to get his memoir released, had to go and get approval as a condition of his job as the National Security Advisor. So what specifically did he have to do? Well, I'll share with you right now what he had to do. He had to submit the manuscript of his book for pre-publication review. And he did that in December with the National Security Council's top official for that review, a woman by the name of Ellen Knight. When he was the National Security Advisor, Bolton had to sign a standard non-disclosure agreement that said that any book that he may eventually write had to go through this mandatory review process prior to being published to ensure that it didn't have any classified information. It all makes sense, right? This agreement is routine for national security advisors and officials in order to get your security clearance and your access to classified information. Again, totally kosher. Ellen Knight told John Bolton in April of 2019 that he had satisfied her request for edits to the manuscript, but when asked when he could expect a letter confirming that the review was complete, she didn't respond. So John Bolton moves forward and tells his publisher, Simon & Schuster, you can publish the book based on Miss Knight's April statement that she was done reviewing his book. Without notifying Bolton, the White House then had another reviewer by the name of Michael Ellis, a political appointee who had never once conducted a pre-publication review. Trump's White House had Michael Ellis now do a pre-publication review. He said in an affidavit that he found, quote, multiple instances of classified information inside John Bolton's manuscript. So because of that, the Trump administration, Trump 1.0, told Bolton, nope, you can't publish this book. But here's the problem with that, though. The National Security Council tells Bolton, hey, can't sell that book because your manuscript still has classified information. The administration sues to stop distribution of the book. They accused John Bolton of giving permission to Simon & Schuster to publish the book before he had the official sign-off, even though Bolton says, no, my assigned pre-publication review person, Ellen Knight, said it was okay to do it. The lawsuit was filed, but very late, right before the book was set to go to sale. And if you'll recall back at this time, in and around the summer of 2020, Bolton was already doing the rounds on national media and international media about this book. Excerpts of the book had already been sent to media, right? And so pretty much huge chunks of it were already up for public consumption. So the judge said, sorry, the cat's out of the bag. But this is what the judge said, which is still very important. Judge Lamberth, though, did say the following, that John Bolton may have to forfeit his $2 million book advance because the Justice Department was also seeking recovery of that. And the judge also said, look, as far as I'm concerned, this is John Bolton's gamble. If he's right and the book doesn't have classified info, you keep your money, no problems, your book sales. But if you're wrong, you can not only lose the profits from your book deal, but you may expose yourself to criminal liability, and you also have imperiled national security. Because the judge also said, look, I've looked at the manuscript, and I got to tell you, there are portions of this book. This is the federal judge saying, there are portions of this book that I believe contain classified information. The irony about all of this is Donald Trump has claimed since day one that John Bolton has been lying in this book. So I'm not quite sure how you can claim that lies are classified information. But of course, that's neither here nor there. And as I said a few minutes ago, John Bolton has been an outspoken critic of Donald Trump ever since he's left the White House back in Trump 1.0. So that does give rise to the issue of, I don't know, perhaps Donald Trump is being a vindictive asshole here. But let's fast forward. In September of 2020, post-book being okayed to be sold, the Justice Department opened a criminal investigation into whether or not Bolton violated the law. The Justice Department convened a grand jury. The grand jury issued a subpoena for communications from Simon & Schuster, as well as the agency that represented Bolton and Bolton. Okay? So the DOJ back in 2020 decided that they wanted to pursue this criminal investigation, convened a federal grand jury that issued subpoenas. Okay? Trump has been hell-bent on John Bolton being criminally prosecuted since years ago. He's so insulted, and he's just a small little petty man that he can't get beyond the fact that Bolton wrote this book. So Donald Trump actually posted on Twitter the following. I'm going to read this to you, and it's going to be shown to you. He says that Bolton was, quote, all washed up until I brought him back and gave him a chance. He broke the law by releasing classified information in massive amounts. He must pay a very big price for this, as others have before him. This should never happen again. I mean, Donald Trump should know a thing or two about unlawful retention of classified information and dissemination, but that's, again, neither here nor there, is it? So also, Trump said that Bolton should be in jail, money seized for disseminating for profit highly classified information. He said Bolton is a dope incompetent and that the book is a compilation of lies and made up stories all intended to make me look bad, end quote. So it gets me back to what I just said. How can the entire book by John Bolton be a lie and yet contain classified information? The classified information is a lie, or John Bolton is a lie, or maybe John Bolton had classified information that's true and it does make Donald Trump look bad because it's true. So, according to CNN, that criminal investigation was closed. So that's why we're all sitting here wondering, what's going on with this? Why are we in August of 2025 and these search warrants are now being executed at Bolton's home and office? And again, we should have some of those questions answered as we get closer to maybe having more, information coming out of these investigations. But let's talk about the players here, because it's really important, right? We've already talked about convicted felon Trump and Bolton, obviously, but let's talk about Kash Patel, because Kash Patel, FBI dumbass extraordinaire, posted on social media as John Bolton's home was being invaded by federal law enforcement. He posted on social media, quote, "No one is above the law, FBI agents on mission." Now, look, he didn't say John Bolton, but we all know that's who Kash Patel was talking about. But here's the thing. In his 2023 book, Kash Patel listed John Bolton as one of dozens of, quote, deep state government officials who were part of a vast conspiracy of opposition to Donald Trump. I mean, you do not have to be a rocket scientist to see that there is a direct cause and effect thing that is going on here. You piss off Donald Trump, he's going to come at you. And he's going to weaponize the federal government to come after you. He's going to try to find something, or he'll manufacture something, right? I mean, we all cannot put this administration past that allegation. We cannot. I want to talk about how the Mar-a-Lago thing kind of comes into play here. There's been a lot of comparisons that you've been hearing about on media about this John Bolton search warrant execution and the Donald Trump Mar-a-Lago thing. And look, what are the common denominators? A federal magistrate judge reviewed an affidavit, the search warrant approved it, and that's what happened. Period. End of story. We eventually got to see the unsealed affidavit in the Mar-a-Lago Classified Documents Espionage Act case. And what did we learn? I want to remind you all of these very important facts because they just go to show the lengths the DOJ went during the Biden administration to frankly cut Donald Trump a break. Do you recall how many times they gave convicted felon Trump the opportunity to return those classified documents? And do you recall the level of trickery, obfuscation, and obstruction of justice that Donald Trump went to with assistance from his lawyers to be able to not return those documents to the Biden administration, to the DOJ, to the National Archives? I mean, I could go on and on. So there is no real apples to apples comparison here, folks. Do you really think Donald Trump gave John Bolton an opportunity to return classified documents if it's really the case that John Bolton, of all people, took classified documents or he disseminated classified information? I mean, no. Here's another thought. I see a lot of people on social media celebrating this search warrant execution on Bolton's home and office. Look, yes, there is something very kind of satisfying when we see the leopards eating the faces energy. I get it. But we got to be really careful here because it's truly a slippery slope. Because we cannot celebrate in the event it is shown that this is a selective prosecution, that this is total political retribution. We cannot celebrate it even if it happens to people that happen to have been in the inner circle of somebody like Trump. Why? Because today it's Bolton, tomorrow it could be you. And we cannot celebrate these destructions of the law or these destructions of the rule of law. We cannot do that. We have to caution ourselves to look at the evidence, look at the facts, look at the law. And even though, again, it may be satisfying to see somebody like John Bolton have to eat some version of crow about what is happening right now, not if it means that it's due to the weaponization of the federal government by Trump and due to this political and now judicial persecution of enemies and opponents of Trump and this administration. You know, John Bolton himself said, and I want to find this quote because I thought it was really important. John Bolton himself has said that he believed that Trump would use the Department of Justice to enact a retribution presidency. And at this point, I pretty much think that John Bolton predicted it accurately. There are people, ironically, again, the name of his memoir being, The Room Where It Happened. There are people that were in the room where it happened in Trump 1.0, in Trump's first term, and they know exactly the lengths that Trump was willing to go to do this type of punishment of political opposition. And there were adults in the room where it happened that said no. And Trump listened, at least we think he did. And now we know that there's no guardrails, no adults. All we have are loyalists, cult followers who are just saying to him, green light, green light, green light, green light. So for Bolton to predict that this is a retribution presidency, for all of us to have known that Project 2025 predicted a retribution presidency, there should be no satisfaction that Bolton was right and that we've been right about this. It should be terror, and it should galvanize us to fight because it's wrong wholesale across the way. One thing that I do want to talk about is this too. This is a criminal investigation into John Bolton, allegedly. Because it's based in a crime, there has to be intent. Meaning it can't just be an accidental retention. It cannot be an accidental telling of classified information, which is why it's a very high standard. It's a high burden of proof. It's beyond and to the exclusion of reasonable doubt in terms of the burden of proof. Probable cause is not something that is just summarily given. And so I want to make sure that we all have the transparency from this administration about this crime that John Bolton, or the crimes that John Bolton allegedly committed. Because in the absence of that transparency, we are all left to conclude, because let me be clear, the presumption of regularity has been eviscerated courtesy of Donald Trump. It is a horrific place to live in your head, especially as a lawyer and a devotee of the law. It is a horrific place to start and launch an analysis with the idea that there's been manipulation of evidence, planting of evidence, manipulation of the law in order to gain these tactical advantages. And yet, this has happened because of Trump. This has happened because of Pamela Joe Bondi's DOJ. This has happened because of FBI's Kash Patel, Todd Blanche, Emil Bovee. I could just go on, right? The presumption of regularity has now been eviscerated because of Donald Trump. I say it again because it is worth underscoring that that is how we now functionally operate when we look at events like search warrants being executed at the home of the former national security advisor for Donald Trump himself. He picks the best people, huh? Look, the facts are going to come out. The investigation will reveal exactly what John Bolton allegedly did. But I wanted to take some time to talk about this because I think it was important for us to recall what happened with Bolton, the bitterness that Trump has had with him, and the fact that we have to question now every step of the way the legality of the measures and the procedures that have been done by law enforcement under this administration. That is the travesty, right? That's the true travesty of justice here, that we have to question everything they've done. We have to question the legality. We have to question the veracity. We have to question the legitimacy of it. But this is all Trump's fault. No one else's. Be mad, be outraged, demand accountability. I'll see you on the other side. Katie Phang here. We launched the Katie Phang News Channel in partnership with the Midas Touch Network so we could bring you the latest in legal and political news. Straight, no chaser. So if you're a fellow truth teller, hit that subscribe button and share the word about this channel so we can build a high information America together.